Welcome back, designers. In today's tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how we are going to be creating a presidential button design inspired by Blue Lightning TV's tutorial that I will be linking in the description bar of this video. I'm going to be creating my button using a series of shapes that I'm going to be filling with color. I'm going to be using the elliptical text option so I can show you how to wrap text around the circle. And I'm going to show you how we are going to be masking in our chosen picture of our presidential candidates. Here I'm using a picture of my darling stepson, Chris. You guys can use whatever picture you want to as long as it's school appropriate and it's either a personal picture or a picture from a copyright-free source, so do not use Google Images, please. For your own designs, you guys can feel free to use your own flag colors. So if you are from a country that does not have red, white, and blue for its flag, feel free to customize your design using your own choice of colors and your own choice of fonts. Without further ado, let's get started. To get started, I'm going to click New File. I'm going to select the Print preset. I'm going to change the dimensions to 10 inches in width by 10 inches in height. I'm going to name this button and I'm going to click Create. I should have a perfectly square document. I want my design to be very symmetrical, so I'm going to create some guides to help me create a well-aligned button design. I'm going to go to the View menu at the top of my workspace. I'm going to select Guides and New Guide. And I'm going to place a horizontal guide at 5 inches or 5 IN, which is going to split my document in half. And I'm going to do the same thing again, going to View, Guides, and New Guide. And I'm going to place a vertical guide at 5 inches as well. Then I'm going to create my background by using the new gradient fill layer. So I'm going to click on the new fill and adjustment layer icon that looks like a circle at the bottom of the layers panel. I'm going to select gradient. For the moment, I'm just going to select a basic black and white gradient. And later on, I'm going to show you guys how you can reverse the colors and you guys can match the colors used in your photo to the colors in the gradient. But for the moment, I'm just going to leave it at a basic black and white gradient and I'm going to reverse it so that the black is on top. Then I'm going to click the new layer icon, which looks like a plus sign at the bottom of your layers panel. And I'm going to use my elliptical marquee tool. Elliptical marquee basically looks like a circle and it's tool number 2 on your toolbar. If you right click, you'll be able to see the elliptical marquee listed second. And if I hold down Shift, I'll be able to create a very symmetrical circle. Make sure that you guys hold down Shift all the way until you release so that it doesn't turn into an oval on you. It doesn't look perfectly centered, so I'm going to use my up arrows to move my selection because again, I want my button design to look very symmetrical. So I'm just using my up and left arrows to position the selection perfectly within my document. Then I'm going to go and fill it with a color. I'm going to go to the Edit menu at the top of my workspace. I'm going to select Fill. I'm going to change the contents to color, and it's going to open up my color picker panel. I'm going to be using the colors of the United States flag. So I'm going to start off with a bright red, and I'm going to click OK to save my changes. With the selection still active, you can see that I have a selection because the marching ants are still visible. I'm going to click on the mask icon at the bottom of my layers panel, and it's going to create a circular mask inside of the circle. This is really important because I'm going to be adding further colors and I want them all to be contained inside the circular shape. I'm going to click back on the main layer. You can see it's selected because it's got a bounding box around it. I'm going to use my normal rectangular marquee tool and I'm going to drag out a rectangle selection, which I'm going to then go to the edit menu, go to fill, color, and now I'm going to fill it with blue. If you want to, you can always look up the hex codes for the exact colors used in the American flag or whatever flag you're referencing. For the moment, I'm just going to leave it at a general royal blue. I'm going to click OK. As I had created that mask earlier, you can see the selection is enclosing the color inside of the circular shape. I'm going to Control D to get rid of my selection, and now I'm going to add an orange, forgive me, a white stripe, not an orange stripe. I'm going to use my marquee tool again, create another rectangular selection, which now I'm going to go and fill with the color white. And finally, I'm going to add another selection using my elliptical marquee, holding down Shift and starting from the center to create a really symmetrical design. I want to make sure that I move my selection, aligning it using my arrow keys in my keyboard so that it's perfectly centered. So that looks pretty close. And I'm going to fill this with white as well. So going to Edit Fill, selecting white as my color, and clicking OK. That looks pretty good. So we have the beginnings of our button right here. I want to make this button look really three-dimensional. So I'm actually going to go and use some layer effects to add a little drop shadow, add a bevel and emboss effect to make the button look like it's three-dimensional and popping out of the screen. With my button layer selected, I'm going to go to FX at the bottom of my layers panel. I'm going to select the drop shadow effect, changing the color of my drop shadow and adjusting the distance. You don't want a really extreme drop shadow like this because it's going to look very fake. You want your drop shadows to be fairly subtle. So adjust the distance accordingly and adjust the size to make it really fuzzy. And then I'm also going to add a bevel and emboss effect. You can adjust the depth of the effect. You can adjust the size depending on how three-dimensional you want it to look. I'm just going to soften the effect because I want it to look 3D, but I don't want it to look really, really fake. And when you're happy with your changes, you're going to click OK to save. Doesn't that look awesome so far? Now that I have the overall button shape created, it's time for me to add my image of my presidential candidates. I'm going to press Ctrl O. I'm going to go to my Downloads folder where I already had my reference image ready to go. Now I'm going to crop out any insignificant parts of my image so you can see this was a screenshot. I'm going to just use my crop tool and get rid of any parts in the background that I don't want. And I'm going to click OK to save my changes. Then I'm going to move my image over by going to Window, Arrange, Tile Vertically. I'm going to use my Move tool and I'm going to click and drag the image over. I no longer need the original image, so I'm going to get rid of it by Xing out the tab. And I'm going to position the image right smack dab in the center where I want it. Now I'm going to make the reference image, I'm going to call it Candidate. I'm going to make my candidate layer invisible by clicking the little eyeball icon. because I want it to fit beautifully inside of the circle in the center. To do so, I'm going to make a selection of my circle by holding down Control and clicking on the mask. This is going to create a perfectly circular selection. I'm going to transform my selection by going to Select, Transform, and I'm going to click on the corners of the bounding box to make the circle progressively smaller. So right about there looks good. Then I'm going to make my picture layer visible again. You can see how it's going to crop out the background. And I'm going to click on the mask icon one more time at the bottom of my layers panel so that I can place the image beautifully inside of the ellipse. I think that looks good so far. I think to spice it up, I might go and add some layer effects to the image. So I'm going to click on the image layer. I'm going to go to FX. I'm going to click Stroke. And I'm going to add a red stroke around the image, just a thin 10 pixel, 10 to 15 pixel stroke around the image. I'm going to match the color to that used in the American flag in the image, or maybe to some of the areas in the button. And I'm going to click OK to save my changes. So far, so good. We're going to press Ctrl S to save our changes before moving forward. And now we're ready to add some text. To add our text, I'm going to click on the new layer icon at the bottom of my layers panel. Looks like a plus sign. I'm going to select tool number 20, which is my shape tool, and I'm going to right click and select ellipse. By default, the shape tool has it set to shape, which is basically going to create a vector shape, right? I don't want it to create a vector shape because if it does, then it's going to block out the design that I have already created so far. So instead, I'm going to go in the options bar and I'm going to select from shape. I'm going to select the drop-down menu and select path. Then I'm going to click on the little gear icon. I'm going to select circle and from center, so that when I click on the center and drag outwards, it's going to create a perfectly symmetrical circle. Now I'm ready to add some text. I'm going to use my type tool. I'm going to drag to the edge of this ellipse. And when I drag to the edge of this ellipse, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see a little closer what I'm doing. When I drag to the edge of the ellipse, with my type tool selected, you guys will see that the cursor is going to turn into a squiggly line. Once I see that squiggly line, it's going to add text that is going to wrap beautifully around the circle. I'm going to type in the candidate's name. I'm going to highlight the name. And I'm going to open up my character panel so that I can further edit this text. I want to center it. I want to select a bold font. And I may want to play around with the tracking a little bit. So I can either open the character panel in the options bar by clicking this little icon that looks like a clipboard, or I can go to Window and Character. In my character panel, the first thing that I want to do is I want to select a very bold font. I had already selected one called Alfarn. You guys can select any font you want as long as it's nice and bold so it stands out from the background of your button. And I'm going to increase the point size to make the name significantly larger. I can always right click, or not right click, double click on the little T's, the double T's next to the point size and adjust it so I can eyeball the size of the text. That looks good so far. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for the bottom. So I want to write for president. So I'm going to zoom out so you guys can see a little closer what I'm doing. I'm going to click on the brand new layer icon that looks like a circle, not a circle, I'm sorry, a plus sign at the bottom of my layers panel. I'm going to use my ellipse. Once again, I'm going to make sure that it's set to path. I'm going to drag from the center to create another ellipse. I'm going to use my type tool. I'm going to click on the path when I see the squiggly lines. And I'm going to write my text, which is for United States President. Now we have a problem. The text is upside down. It's also too big. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to show typographic hierarchy by making the second level progressively smaller. And I'm going to use my path selection tool, which looks like a black arrow. I'm going to click on the text and move it in. You can see I made a little typo here, so let me go and correct that using my type tool. And you guys can scoot the text over just using backspace, using your enter keys, and you can kind of like adjust it even further using your path selection tool if you guys want to go and move the text over along the path. So far that looks really good. I think what I'm going to have to do though is make my text just a little bit larger so that it centers it a little bit more. So from 16 points, I'm going to change it to maybe 18 points. Use my path selection tool to just go and shift it. So you guys are going to shift it ever so slightly. I can see that the text is a little bit bunched together. So using my type tool, I'm going to highlight the text. And I might want to go and adjust the tracking from 0, which makes it look kind of bunched together, to about 50 points. You guys are going to adjust it as necessary. You can also go and drag your mouse over the icon for tracking and then just kind of eyeball how far apart the text is going to be. So I think probably at 70 points looks pretty good. You guys are going to adjust it based on how big your text is. I'm going to zoom out so I can see my results so far. And that is looking really professional, if I do say so myself. I'm just going to get rid of the guides because they're distracting me. Anytime you guys want to get rid of the guides, you can go to View, Show, and None. And the guides are going to go away. You can always pull them back up if necessary. But I'm almost done with my design. I literally just have to go and change a few colors, add a few effects, and I'll be ready to export my final draft. Now, I kind of want to add a little bit of an effect to the name Chris Abaya, so I'm going to go back to FX, add a very subtle drop shadow. I'm the queen of the drop shadows, my friends. I just feel like with a drop shadow, it makes the text stand out. You can kind of see the difference here, and I click the little eyeball icon next to it. Doesn't it look so much better with a drop shadow? At least in my opinion. And since I'm almost done with my design, all I want to do is change the colors of my gradient in the background to the colors used within the actual button. So I'm going to go back to my first layer, which was that gradient fill layer. I'm going to open the gradient colors that I had previously used, click on the little color stops, And then I think what I'm going to do is match the blue used in the button, maybe like a dark blue, or maybe I'm going to match the gray blue of his shirt. To try to match the colors a little bit better. Click OK when you guys are done and happy with your changes. Not to brag, but I think this is a very professional button design and I'm ready to export my final draft. So if you guys are ready, you're going to go to File, Export, Export As. I'm going to make sure that I leave my file as a PNG file. And I'm going to click Export to save my changes. I'm going to call it Button, save it to my documents. And I'm ready to submit my final work. So I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. I cannot wait to see your own presidential button designs. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions whatsoever. Until then, peace out.